What you are hearing is the inevitable sound of change happening to this frequency.
An absolutely unbelievable guest upcoming on today's show. Sabrina De Sousa is a former CIA intelligence officer that was jailed by Barack Obama for political gain. Literally, to suppress information from being released to you, she was sentenced to prison. She's going to tell us the story coming up in the second half. It's an amazing story. Gina Haspel, by the way, the director of the CIA at the time, was the chief in London overseeing Sabrina De Sousa, and walked away from Sabrina De Sousa in order to suppress that information when the Steele dossier was coming out. Remember that? The big Russia hoax? The one now who is being called for her immediate termination by Sidney Powell, an attorney for Trump. It's all amazing. Speaking of law and order and law enforcement and order in our country, we have to speak of good coffee. That's right. Law Dog coffee. It is the only thing that I drink, and that's because not only do I like the coffee, because it's pretty good shit, but also because I know that every purchase of Law Dog coffee, every dollar that I spend, a portion of those proceeds are going to go to the Wounded Blue. The Wounded Blue is responsible for donating money to over 6,000 documented families of officers catastrophically wounded in the line of duty. LawDogCoffeePCRadio.com. That's LawDogCoffeePCRadio.com. Use the promo code PCRadio for 10% off site-wide. Richard, let's get after it.
The enemy of progressive politicians and politically correct assholes. PC Radio. Worldwide at thepcradioshow.com.
And welcome into all of our Mojo 50 listeners. That's on iHeartRadio. Also, the OpsLens app. Make sure that you get over there and download that. We're on Cloud Hub, channel 200. And if you're not over there, you better get over there right now. My name is Stu. That is Richard Leonard. Patriotically Correct Radio is on 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern on every single weekday. Richard, I have exciting news. The new design has been launched. The Antifa shirt is now in the store. So make sure that you get over to the PCRadioshow.com, click on the tab. It'll take you down to a merch button. Click on there. Antifa, the new ISIS, but for pussies. It's a great shirt, Richard.
I love it.
You know, and there's been some serious bombs dropping. Sidney Powell, the attorney for Trump, has been on with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend, and there's this thing is completely out of control. It's amazing to me that as the future seems to point in the direction of an America with open borders and defunded police departments, we're now seeing outcry from the very grandstanders that took a stab at elevating their social political platforms with hateful, racist, divisive, and shocking rhetoric. And now those same radicals are asking, where are the cops? Because they're gone. Their command staffs have been infected with liberal policies, and when you call, they're most likely not coming. In certain cases, we've actually seen large groups of cops running away from insurgents, hurling bottles and rocks in their direction, shooting airsoft guns at them, lobbing explosive mortars and urine bombs at lines of officers standing a post, attempting to minimize the damage to the inner cities they're charged with protecting, as they're damaged by the very people that called for their abolishment and are the ones responsible for starting the fires. These domestic terrorists are the same groups, Antifa, Black Lives Matter Incorporated, who will soon wonder where to look for food and fuel, how to shop for groceries, where to look for diapers, how to obtain medicine. This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian, one world order system. The political candidates and elected representatives who are so quick to grab a microphone behind a carefully positioned truck positioned as a makeshift stage and then threaten children with the burning of their city, the same radicals that led large criminal crowds in catchy and trending chants like shoot the police or pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, are now asking you to accept the results of an obviously corrupt system and stolen election that positioned Joe Biden as the media's president. The media that prematurely called the election prior to the certification of the votes tallied by individual states is the same media that has failed to report that a raid was carried out in Germany by United States Army Special Forces on Saturday, at which point the U.S. government obtained servers that hosted presidential election votes for storing and counting after being recorded by a voting software called Dominion. You may have heard about that recently. This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian one-world order system. I'm going to get to that. The Associated Press, the same people that called the election naming Joe Biden the 46th president, and who actively covered up an investigation that revealed criminal activity involving his son, Hunter Biden, are now the same group of journalists fact-checking the statement by a United States congressman that reported the raid, calling it likely false. Excuse my skepticism here, but I'll take the risk at securing the conspiracy theorist title in this case, and I'm sure you're all feeling the same way. Along with open borders and the disappearance of the cops in your neighborhood, the United States is looking forward to the dark winter Joe Biden promised the world in the final presidential debate where he faced off against Donald Trump, who has repeatedly stated that he will not accept the results of the election, which he calls rigged. We here at PC Radio position ourselves right in alignment with that sentiment and will not apologize for refusing to accept that a candidate was able to defeat the incumbent when video after video of rallies hosted by Biden depicted amazingly large charged crowds of 35 people, half of which were likely staffers for the campaign. Biden slept the whole summer. He rarely left the house. And when he did, it was most often to appear on scripted television shows hosted by a biased interviewer that allowed for a teleprompter reading candidate to fumble through his gaffes while being permitted redos until it was moderately acceptable for air. Ridiculous. This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian, one-world order system. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump was doing what a president does. He was working his ass off, and doing it alone with no backing from anyone in government, even in his own party. Trump is used to being attacked, as he has been since he came down that escalator with the First Lady and announced his candidacy for president over 5 years ago. He's been illegally spied on by the most corrupt presidential administration in our world's history. He's been labeled a racist despite signing the First Step Act into law, which gives African Americans locked up for drug crimes a second second chance at life, freeing thousands of black folks from prison sentences that would have been damning for the rest of their lives. He's been investigated using a dossier that was literally paid for and manufactured by Hillary Clinton, his opponent in a presidential election campaign, who by all accounts should be trading places with those that Trump released from those prison sentences. Lock her up. Trump was relentlessly scrutinized by a fake Russia investigation that failed to produce merit and was ultimately impeached by Pelosi's Congress based on a phone call. A phone call. This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian one world order system. Despite the media's attempt to frame Biden as the good guy that was going to bring down the racist, misogynist, bigoted orange man, Trump continued to work as he led the world's biggest economy, the lowest unemployment rates the black community has ever seen, the strongest military in our nation's history, and the most robust following a presidential campaign has ever witnessed, producing unprecedented crowds, edging 30 to 40,000 inside campaign events with tens of thousands outside the gates unable to get in. The president's downplay of the coronavirus wasn't a denial of the media-labeled pandemic, but an obvious statement of facts as he tried to reassure Americans, citing the COVID survivability rate in excess of 99%. The media and the Biden campaign continued to slam the president all summer, as we were told ad nauseum that 80 million Americans have been infected and over 200,000 are dead as a result of what Americans would eventually label the plandemic, as constricting lockdowns, the closure of small business, and mask mandates forced Americans to stay home, give up their income, be prevented from seeing their elderly parents, or attend weddings and funerals, as they were threatened with crimes, criminal prosecution, should they violate the orders of their tyrannical state leaders. This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian one-world order system. Joe Biden himself thought he was going to lose, but you and I are supposed to accept it. We're supposed to believe that President Trump, who had a tremendous lead at bedtime in every key battleground state pivotal for re-election, would see a shrinking lead minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, after the counting stopped somewhere between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning in the hours following the closing of polling places. You and I are not supposed to be curious about Arizona being called by Fox News while hundreds of thousands of citizens in that state remained in line to vote. It shouldn't be curious to us, and we may be labeled racists, should we question the 123,000 ballots appearing all at one time and all with a big fat check mark by the name Joseph Biden. Statistically impossible. We shouldn't dare question thousands of military votes being discovered in a dumpster, poll watchers being improperly denied access to observe the counting of ballots, or violence-ridden radical left-wing terrorist groups intimidating people from voting in person at their local polling places. Just accept it. Just get over it. Or in the words of Whoopi Goldberg, just grow a set. This is all part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian one world order system. You're supposed to feel like you're losing your mind. That's the plan. Don't you see? You're supposed to lay awake at night, tossing and turning, thinking about how impossible it would be for someone to pull this off. It can't be possible to literally steal an entire presidential election and rig the whole damn system, making it impossible for Trump to be reelected. You're supposed to look at yourself in the mirror while you're brushing your teeth in the morning and say to yourself, literally, out loud, this is effing crazy. I have to be losing my mind. The constant debunking of the theory and fact-checking or censoring from big tech giants responsible for what you see in your Facebook and Twitter feeds, along with the mainstream media that constantly floods your living room. They construct your dinner table discussions with the illusion that you're a total nut job should you believe this narrative. It's exactly the outcome intended with the PSYOP mission sponsored by radicals on their own soil, on our soil, right here in America. The radicals we've elected, the representatives of Americans, are actually against America. It seems nuts, I know, but it's real. And you're not crazy. It's happening. This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian one-world order system. In the second half of today's show, we're going to talk with Sabrina De Sousa. She's a former CIA intelligence officer who was jailed by Barack Obama, highlighting the systematic targeting of America that I'm highlighting here. Regular listeners to this program have no doubt noticed the out-of-character repetition in today's open. I can't be more clear. I want you to know wholeheartedly that you're not alone when your mind starts to wander into the factual abyss that ignores media propaganda and actually looks at physical evidence and anomalies. Inconsistencies are suspicious, and it's okay for you to not only question this election, but to actually say boldly and out loud that you refuse to accept the results. We must stop the steal. Trump lawyer Sidney Powell called for the immediate termination of CIA Director Gina Haspel over the weekend. Powell and Giuliani are saying the Trump team has physical evidence of millions of votes being stolen from Trump by Dominion software and given to Biden, throwing the entire election. She was on with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend. Here's part of that.
Well, let me put it this way. First of all, I never say anything I can't prove. Secondly, the evidence is coming in so fast, I can't even process it all. Millions of Americans have written, I would say by now, definitely hundreds of thousands have stepped forward with their different experiences of voter fraud. But this is a massive election fraud, and I'm very concerned it involved not only Dominion and its Smartmatic software, but that the software essentially was used by other election machines also. It's the software that was the problem. Even their own manual explains how votes can be wiped away. They can it's like drag and drop Trump votes to a separate folder and then delete that folder. It's absolutely brazen how people bought this system and why they bought this system. In fact, every state that bought Dominion for sure should have a criminal investigation, or at least a serious investigation of the officers in the states who bought the software.
Richard, you're a hardworking, child-raising, blue-collared patriot that served our country. You're not the guy that gets balls deep into the news cycle of politics every day, but surely, just like every American listening to this, you're pissed off. How does it make you feel? I mean, are you one of the guys that thinks he's losing his marbles while you watch the systematic targeting of America?
Well, hearing stuff like that is extremely disturbing. She made it sound like the software was 150% developed to cheat, steal votes.
Yeah.
And how does anybody who claims to be fair, election officials, i.e., go, yeah, that looks great. We should get that one for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the ones that are fair that want this to be installed. It's the ones who know they're going to lose. There was no doubt that Joe Biden or any other candidate facing the incumbent, Donald Trump, was going to lose. There was nobody in the Democratic Party that was capable of beating the Trump machine. It's a machine. There's never been a following bigger. As I highlighted when I was talking, the boat parades. We've talked about this over and over again on this show. Listen, in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, I was watching live videos on Facebook. I could not believe my eyes. Hundreds of thousands of people were gathered there to support the president. It was absolutely nuts. The media, of course, reporting that a couple of thousand showed up.
Yeah.
Antifa came out at night, and apparently it became violent. And, with the hundreds of thousands of people that were there holding posters, here's the fear, is that in just weeks, those posters could be replaced with rifles. Yes. As patriotic Americans say, we're not going to stand for this. We have to stop the steal.
Yeah, and furthermore, the other side is claiming that everyone needs to just chill out, let it happen. Biden won, go lick your wounds and come back and be great Americans when you're done crying. But also over the weekend, we saw many examples of that side attacking more Trump supporters. There was a video of some, they called them Biden supporters in the video, throwing fireworks and Roman candles or whatever at Trump supporters eating outside after a MAGA rally.
Yeah, it's insane. And if you're talking about what's going on now, but let's think about what happened 4 years ago. 4 years ago, was there a peaceful transition? No. They were screaming in the street. The tolerant party was melting down in snowflake type riots where they screamed and cried in public. The president himself was investigated illegally. Obamagate is real. His campaign and his presidential administration were spied on by our own intelligence agencies, by the most corrupt president in the history of the world, Barack Hussein Obama. There was no peaceful transition.
Never have to answer for it.
Never. We're hoping that this investigation is going to start some of that. Sidney Powell continued on Maria Bartiromo here.
And I want to get your take on what you and I spoke about just a few minutes ago, and that is a gentleman named Peter Neffringer. Tell me how he fits into all of this.
Yes, well, he is listed as its former Admiral Peter Neffringer, or retired Admiral Peter Neffringer. He is president and on the board of directors of Smartmatic. And it just so happens he's on Mr. Biden's presidential transition team that's going to be non-existent because we're fixing to overturn the results of the election in multiple states. And President Trump won by not just hundreds of thousands of votes, but by millions of votes that were shifted by this software that was designed expressly for that purpose.
It's unbelievable. So, listen, between Giuliani, and Powell, it sounds like they have real evidence of named sources and sworn testimony from people who are not only coming forward talking about their personal experiences voting, okay, because we've seen, and we talked to, like, for example, Maxwell Silverhammer, who's a blind guy who went in there and was led over here. The thing wasn't properly equipped for, the accessible type situation. And so then, he was basically asked, okay, well, who are you voting for? And I'll check the box for you. There are countless stories, hundreds of thousands of stories like that about individual voting experiences going on in the country right now. But what Giuliani and Powell are saying is that they have the software. They have it. And that there is damning evidence there, hardcore physical evidence that will overturn this election, that Biden will never be sworn in as the 46th president of this country.
Well, it seems like part of their hurdle right now is finding a judge that is going to be fair about it. From all accounts, other than what happened in Philadelphia over the last couple of days, where the judge overturned some votes, but it wasn't even a big enough margin to sway either way, one way or the other. But it doesn't sound like a lot of these judges are actually listening.
Well,
and
the Supreme Court did comment on it over the weekend. Justice Alito issued an order that everybody is to hold on to these votes and separate the ones that came in the middle of the night from the ones that were cast during the open polling hours. And so the Supreme Court is slowly starting to get involved. Pennsylvania already automatically, but I would assume that these states where these lawsuits are already being filed, Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, and all these other key swing battleground states are going to get involved with this and eventually be before the Supreme Court, which is why it was so imperative that the Senate acted as quickly as they did in the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, who I have predicted is going to be the it factor in this election.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Trump hasn't actually filed their lawsuits. These lawsuits are being filed by individuals who went to vote. These lawsuits are being filed by organizations and corporations inside of those states against the state polling officials in those polling places, and against that system in those legislative continuances or goings on, if you will. But the actual Trump lawsuits haven't been filed yet, and he better get going on this. I mean,
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
I got all this evidence. They better start rolling some of it out.
So my thing is, okay, we've been listening now for 2 weeks to Sidney Powell with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News' Fox News Business, talking on Sunday Morning Futures about all this evidence. Well, you better dump it. So listen, Giuliani and Sidney Powell, you got to drop this stuff right now, because otherwise what's going to happen is this media is going to start debunking it. But if you've noticed on Facebook, when people are talking about what Sidney Powell is mentioning on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria, when you post about this, guess what's not happening? It's not being fact checked. They're not saying, no, this isn't true. And why do you think that might be?
Yeah, I was just going to say that all the posts, all the PC radio posts on social media that usually get the little fact check meter and Snopes and all that other bullshit, They haven't been showing up.
And inside of Minnesota Conservatives, I've noticed, inside of We Support Police, that group that I'm a part of, Cops and Conservatives, another great Facebook group. If you live in Woodbury, Minnesota, for example, where we're from, the Woodbury Conservatives group, Hold the Line Minnesota was out over the weekend, and they were demanding, recounts and things like that. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. Protesting does work. Okay, it does. Now, I would say that us saying we're not going to accept the results of the election, they're going to go, well, I don't really give a shit, and screw you, because the government, specifically the radical left, does not care about you and I, does not care about this country, does not care about the future that your kids are going to have or your grandkids. Believe me, you have to get involved. And so just saying it is one thing, but actually refusing to accept it physically is another thing. Now, I'm not condoning or promoting violence here, but I will say this. In the history of our country's independence and freedom was won using violence, okay? And it's been maintained with violence. The violence hasn't been here domestically on our shores for the most part, with the exception of a few pockets here and there, or when our adversaries brought the fight here over 9/11. But, we've gone to the fight. We've gone to Iraq, we've gone to Afghanistan, we've gone to Kuwait, we've gone to Bosnia, Herzegovina, we've gone to Russia, we've gone to China, we've gone to the Ukraine, we've been in Germany, we've had installations from our military set up all over the globe to keep the violence from coming here and to use violence to maintain our freedom and individual liberties here. I'm saying it's going to happen. We are, no matter what happens here, if Biden is sworn in, I know patriots, I know them very well. I know a lot of them. I don't know a lot of them also. And the ones that I don't know, I can speculate with pretty good confidence. They're sitting in their easy chair over the weekend. They're sipping on their 3-finger pour of scotch. They're having their cigar. And they're saying to themselves and to their wives, or to their husbands, in a lot of cases, don't let me get involved. Don't let me get involved. Because when I get involved, it's going to hit the shan. But I'm telling you right now, they're going to get involved. And when they do, like you've predicted probably accurately, Richard, which is unlike most other things that you've predicted on this show, because you're probably going to be right about this one, it's going to be over with very quickly.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves with my predictions here.
Yeah, well, let's slow the ball there. It's rolling a little fast. I can see the mouse on the wheel up there, and things are starting to twist and turn, and it's approaching evening time here. You've had a chance to brush your teeth and get going. Let's move on.
But, since the beginning of time, documented all the way back. In fact, last night I was just watching some documentary about the Templars and the 1100 blah, 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 blah. Violence is what keeps peace. Those who desire peace prepare for war. There is no way to secure peace and to secure order, law and order, without using violence when necessary.
That's right.
I'm not trying to advocate for being a warmonger or anything like that, but fact of the matter is that there is no other way to make sure that everything that you hold dear is 150% safe unless you are ready, able, and willing.
They called Trump a warmonger, remember?
Violence.
We were undoubtedly going to go to war with North Korea, Iran, all of that. He's bringing them home. He's bringing troops home. One more clip here from Sidney Powell before we get to break.
We have sworn witness testimony of why the software was designed. It was designed to rig elections. He was fully briefed on it. He saw it happen in other countries. It was exported internationally for profit by the people that are behind Smartmatic and Dominion. They did this on purpose. It was calculated. They've done it before. We have evidence from 2016 in California. We have so much evidence, I feel like it's coming in through a fire hose.
That's excellent. And I cannot wait until it drops. In the second half, we're going to be talking to Sabrina De Sousa. This is going to be incredible. She was a CIA intelligence officer that was jailed by Barack Obama. She was in London. She had access to the dossier, the fake Russia phony dossier. She has information about Gina Haspel. Gina Haspel was then the chief in London. She is now the director of the CIA, the one that Sidney Powell is calling for the resignation of immediately, or the termination of if she's not going to leave. Crazy stuff. More PC Radio straight ahead. Make sure that you get over to the PCRadioshow.com, click on merch, and get yourself the new Antifa ISIS for Pussies shirt. Got to pay some bills. Be back in 60 seconds with Sabrina De Sousa. Don't go anywhere. My name is Stu. That's Richard. Boy, I tell you what, you start to get all worked up when you're talking about these things like we've been talking about in the first half. And I'm seeing that Sabrina De Sousa is waiting in our room here. Intern Boy has her pulled up, and I think we're just working on some audio issues to get her in the second half. But we got to pay some bills here. I want to talk to you about our good friends over at Johnson Jewelers. They're located in the state of Minnesota, but it shouldn't matter to you where they're located because the interwebs is a great thing. The internet will allow you to communicate with Johnson Jewelers globally, internationally, as well as around the world. So bring your custom jewelry desire straight to Johnson Jewelers because they will create a custom piece of jewelry for you that will be unlike no others, guaranteed. The quality will also be second to none. I go to Johnson Jewelers. Richard goes to Johnson Jewelers. Whether you're talking about a Johnson watch, custom watch, or if you're talking about rings, maybe a pendant or something, a stone that you have that you want set just the way that you want it for a ring, for a bracelet, something even to go around your toe. I mean, girls wear things around their ankles. Guys do too. We won't judge. Anything that you want, nobody's going to judge because the only thing they're going to be able to talk about is how beautiful that custom piece of jewelry is. And it was made by Johnson Jewelers. Visit them online today, johnsonjewelers.com. That's johnsonjewelers.com. Sabrina De Sousa coming up right now, johnsonjewelers.com.
Censored by Twitter, shadow banned on Facebook, and hated by fake news media. The Patriotically Correct Radio Show with Stu and Rich, Mojo 50 Radio.
Welcome back to the second half of the Patriotically Correct Radio Show. My name is Stu Peters. That is Richard Leonard. This portion brought to you by Law Dog Coffee. If you support the police and you like good coffee, get over to lawdogcoffeepcradio.com. That's lawdogcoffeepcradio.com. Remember that every single bag of Law Dog coffee that is sold, every piece of swag, all of it, a portion of those proceeds go to the Wounded Blue, an organization founded by Randy Sutton, who happens to be the most highly decorated officer in the history of the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. And that organization has documented assisting over 6,000 families of catastrophically wounded officers. It's a great cause. Law Dog Coffee. As you see in the bottom of the screen, we have promised you an appearance on Twitter, on our social media accounts, and throughout the first part of today's broadcast that we were going to welcome Sabrina De Sousa. Sabrina, you are a former CIA intelligence officer. You were a first-hand recipient of the hammer of corruption by our federal government, specifically the Barack Obama administration. You were jailed because you had information that supposedly nobody wanted to come to the public. That's what we can assume is the reason why you were jailed. Tell us your story.
Okay, so I was assigned in Italy as, of course, an intelligence officer, and I was working very closely with the Italian intelligence and law enforcement, and on counterterrorism, pretty much. And when we are assigned overseas, this is really important. We work to protect the people of that country. So in that case, the Italian citizens from terrorist attacks. So after 9/11, when this program called Renditions ramped up, Europe came into play, but really most of the really bad guys were not in Europe. But anyway, one of them, a Muslim cleric, was rendered to Egypt. The CIA made a case that he posed a clear and present danger. And the Italian government had to be on board with this. The reason is, and this is again important, was sanctioned activity. The President of the United States had to authorize it, if not the National Security Council, in this case, Condoleezza Rice, and the Italian government at the highest levels had to authorize it. It wasn't just like the intelligence, the chief of intelligence in Italy. It had to be the Italian government. So this took place. The individual was rendered. In Italy, they call it kidnapping, to Egypt. He was then set free in a year for lack of prosecutable evidence against him. So why exactly was he rendered then? So once he was set free, he called Italy, he called his buddies in Italy, and he said what happened to him. He was tortured, he was taken, the whole story. So immediately then a prosecutor launched an investigation, and Italians and Americans were indicted. When the trial began, the Italian government stepped in. They masked the identities of those who authorized the American leadership of the CIA, who authorized the rendition, and covered it with state secrets. They allowed the rest of us to be prosecuted, and we are rank and file officers. And I'll be referring to rank and file throughout your show because I think this is important. And finally, even the Italians were granted immunity. So who was left? Just the Americans. The Obama administration sat back for 8 years and watched this entire trial, the prosecution, it went on for about 4 years, this very publicized trial. You know, if you talk about what we're seeing now, you know, the psyops to do with the disinformation, and what was going on with this case. Among those who was convicted was a senior US Air Force colonel. For the first time in the history of the American military, US military, a senior colonel had been left behind in the battlefield. I think your viewers who are part of the military would understand that that is a violation of the military's code of conduct. You don't leave anyone behind. And that is exactly what happened. So, so pretty much the bottom line is that, a few of us were scapegoated to protect those who made a bad decision at the CIA.
Why do you think they jailed you? Why do you think Obama jailed you? Was he trying to suppress information from coming to light to the American public?
Well, most of this time, Obama, this happened under Obama, but the time I was jailed is interesting because if you recall, in the last few years, we've heard about Italy and the United Kingdom as being part of Spygate, right?
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing to bring down President Trump. So I started speaking out. I was overseas at the time, visiting with my family in Portugal, and I started to speak out a bit about it. So Trump won unexpectedly, and John Brennan, the director of the CIA, during the transition period, he went to Portugal, fast-tracked my going to prison. But here's the interesting part, though. It was fast-tracked to go to prison immediately. But then I get a phone call saying, who's helping you out in the Trump administration? Because finally, someone in the Trump administration who had been following my case for many years, we got in touch with each other. And he said, don't worry, this administration, the president, will not allow something like this to happen. So all of that was put on hold. The day General Flynn was fired, remember 13th of February 2017, was the day that the arrest took place, that week took place, and I was put in prison. It was the Trump administration, and I was the first person to be released from prison among all those that the president has brought back home from prison. I was number one on that list. It was an absolute what I would say, absolute automatic reaction from the administration, an outsider president who had no baggage from the past with the intelligence, who was not there to protect cover-ups and what was going on, that had been going on now for, 10 years. He just moved swiftly, got me out of prison, and then it was supposed to be, and they continued to help me, the administration. But then there was a sudden turnaround in my case. All those who were helping me in the White House were gone, and I was told, you have to go back to Italy to serve the sentence. Now I went back. I didn't have to go, but I went because that was the one way I could get some legal, issues resolved. But once I got there, it was very clear that the CIA and Italy had worked together, and there were many things put in place. There was an agreement that was put in place, and one part of the agreement was I served the sentence so that the person who was responsible for this fiasco in the first place was allowed to have the charges dropped against him. This is called trading one officer, rank and file officer, to protect someone else. And then I ended up actually having to escape from Italy. And this happened when Gina Haspel, the director of the CIA, and Secretary of State Pompeo showed up in Rome, no word from them. I mean, I was never contacted by them. And the message that would send to the Italians is that the Trump administration doesn't care about this person and we can do what they want. Turns out that President Trump was not told anything about the past, and he was misled completely, because there's no way the president would have made me an exception to his policy of bringing Americans home and protecting American rank and file officers.
Amazing.
Wow.
You've been to Congress, people, with this.
I started with Congress. Jones Day was representing me at the time. I started with Congress in 2008, 2009, and went on till 2017. And every single one of my letters, written by a prestigious law firm, were ignored. Senator Feinstein was the ranking member at the time. Finally, in 2017, I approached Devin Nunes, who is well known, of course, for coming up with this plot against the president. And he told me about this agreement that was in place. Now, I'm hoping that he didn't know the details of the agreement, because that would be pretty bad, to allow a CIA officer to be traded in another country as a favor to another country, because this helped the Italians with a few legal problems that they had to do with this case.
It's almost like one of these real intense Vince Flynn style books, but it's the reality of it. It just kind of hits you right in the fifis. I can't believe that this happened to you. I'm very sorry that this happened to you.
Well, I'm sorry this happened. It happened to me, but I think the larger issue right here, and this is really important because it's happening right now. So this happened to me for many years, and I always say it's called targeting Americans overseas. There's a reason that the Americans that were targeted in President Trump's orbit in his campaign, most of the activity took place in the United Kingdom and Italy, and perhaps elsewhere. And the reason for that is that then you can't have the FBI come in or the Department of Justice come in and subpoena people, subpoena documents. All of this is out of reach then of US, the Justice Department and US law enforcement. If you recall, Durham and Barr went to Italy, and the person the witness has disappeared. Has been gone missing for 2 years, and all they gave Barr and Durham was a tape recording. So that's the effectiveness of it. The same thing with these Dominion machines. Why do you think the servers? I mean, we have servers. I mean, we have a state-of-the-art technology at servers in the United States. Why do you think these servers are in another country? It's because then, how do you get to the bottom of who is running these servers? Can you subpoena them? No, they're all foreigners, right? Who on whose country these servers reside.
We're going to get to the servers here in a minute, and I want to talk to you more about that. Joining us this evening is Sabrina De Sousa. Sabrina is a former CIA intelligence officer who was jailed and forced to serve prison time, basically thrown to the wolves by the Obama administration. At the time in London, Gina Haspel was the chief. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. She is now the director of the CIA. And Sidney Powell has called for her immediate termination by the way that they mishandled this Dominion stuff. Can you opine on that? Why should the American people know that Sidney Powell is calling for the termination of Gina Haspel? Why is she complicit in this?
So, I heard that. And so, over the last few months, in fact, over a year, you've had a lot of people opine on why Gina Haspel is there in the first place, why she was picked to be the director, when all her support came from the very people who hate President Trump. John Brennan, James Clapper, just about everybody who has been against this president. So why would you appoint someone like that? I don't know who recommended her. What's significant about Sidney Powell's saying that Gina Haspel should be fired is it's a person very close to the president right now who is fighting on his behalf. And I don't think she would have just said that with as much conviction as she did if this was not something that was in some way blessed by or approved by the White House. Because in the past, everyone's been talking about this, journalists and pundits all over the place. Yeah, I have Ray and Haspel. Ray, the director of the FBI, should be fired. But Sidney Powell saying that, with what's going on and with what they know right now, is significant.
It's your assertion or assumption, which would be an intelligent one, an educated guess, if you will, that the president is aware that Sidney Powell is out here publicly calling for the termination of his CIA director. That's what you're saying.
That's what I believe, because it's kind of because coming from her, and now she is in possession of whatever it is that they are going to disclose, and of everything that's gone on, dead people voting, and no signatures, and envelopes missing and things like that. The most significant would be Dominion, the voter machines. That would be absolutely significant. And the timing, in my opinion, of when the timing for the significance would be the minute the voting stopped, when this was plugged into the wall, which is not supposed to be plugged to any internet thing, and what the update that allegedly happened entails. Was it an update of the algorithms? What exactly? Because the minute it was switched on again, then we had this big flip of the ballots, right? That went on.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is how do we, at what point did the Dominion software, excuse me, sway the votes? And I'm guessing what we're going to see is it was at 4 a.m. When most Americans went to bed thinking they're going to wake up to see Trump's victory, and all of a sudden all these swing states went the other way. And I'm guessing that's when they plugged them into the wall, into the internet, and all those other things you just outlined. It's
right. Yeah, and I think
frustrating.
Between that timing, because 4 o'clock, I think, or 3 o'clock in some places, they started the recount again. And that's when all these anomalies took place. So I'm kind of curious, and I'd like to see what's going on with it. And as far as to complete the thought on the reason why Sidney Powell brought up Gina Haspel, this is would be a failure then, considered a failure then, much like 9/11 and a few other things that we've seen, the Iraq War, of the intelligence not predicting that this was going to happen to and inform the president that these servers are abroad, these are foreign entities that own them. This is something, and also from what I understand, Gina Haspel really brought in the best and brightest of IT into the CIA because, of course, we need to be at the cutting edge of everything. So why this never happened is a very interesting question. Was it an oversight? I don't think so. It couldn't possibly be such a blatant oversight, considering Democrats in the House Intelligence had already been talking about these machines for a couple of years now, you see, saying that they had numerous exploitable vulnerabilities. And we're going to hear more about that. But I think that would be the most significant part of the election problems that are going on.
Is Gina Haspel a corrupt individual that's being influenced by radical progressives?
I don't know. I can't say that. But the issue here with the Haspel, and this is from my own experience from the time I was working over there, she's had very senior leadership positions. She's come up the ranks. She's a very good bureaucrat. She's politically astute. She could be very good in the admin, running the agency, but she's not an operations officer to begin with, from what I understand. But also that, how there are many things, including my case, that she and the past leadership would prefer never came to light, which is why all of the things happened to me, because she's been there for so much of this. She was there throughout this whole the whole torture program, and and the Durham investigation on that. And I think also, so she comes with that baggage, right?
Yeah.
Most internal officers who are put in that position come with. To that point too, outsiders never survive at the CIA. I mean, it's 6 months minimum, 18 months max, and they're gone because the CIA pretty much ejects them. I know Porter Goss, a congressman, was running the CIA around 2006 or so, when he asked for an investigation into this rendition, the Milan rendition, as I call it, I've hashtagged it that way, and he was ousted. He left the agency without the CIA would not, literally the CIA, this group that Haspel and others belong to, would not allow the Inspector General to conduct an investigation. They would not allow Porter Goss to order the investigation. And finally, when he was ousted and General Hayden came in, who was also responsible for the military not being able to assert SOFA.
Was Gina Haspel a part of this Russian dossier deal? I mean, so she was in London as the chief when this whole thing was being put together and it was coming to light and they were trying to take down Trump then. It was paid for. Everything was debunked. It was a complete hoax. Was she responsible for okaying the release of that information for the American public to hear? Did she give that thing the wink and the nod?
Well, she was there throughout that time. Now, what exactly her role is, the details of her role, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. As the chief in London, is there any way that she wouldn't know about it?
There's no way.
Okay.
There's no daylight between what goes on with the British intelligence and the head of the CIA in London, and especially since it was over a period of time. It wasn't like something that happened for 10 minutes and then she was maybe not there or something, but there's no daylight at all between the two. So that's, that's the other thing though. I recently heard that, if you disclose the Durham report, and I think, if that goes forward, it will impact bilateral relations. Our relationship with the British is extremely important. It's the most, the closest we have in terms of an ally. But I would make an exception this time for something like this, because the CIA, we taxpayers fund the CIA. The Congress approves what they do. This is not their mission. Their mission is, part of their mission is not to pick the next president of the United States.
Right.
That is not their mission. And that is what it has become since 2017, ever since President Trump came in, because he came in as an outsider. He came in to challenge the status quo, and he had his right-hand man there, his wingman, General Flynn. That's why they had to remove General Flynn, you see. So, and then it pretty much kind of went downhill for the president for a few years on that. So that, I think, is what should worry every single American. We should not have the intelligence agencies identify and sabotage a candidate or decide who the next president of the United States should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, for lack of a better analogy, who's going to spy on the spies, and you're right. Us as taxpayers pay for the CIA to operate. But if there wasn't people who had some dang integrity, like yourself, and I'm sure there's others out there, nobody would ever know. Nobody has the clearance. I mean, I have a security clearance through the military, but I certainly have I can't touch anything that would be able to help my fellow man understand what really goes on behind the scenes.
And those who do try and push back, like myself, end up, retaliation is harsh, that everyone knows. And that's where they come forward. Now with Spygate, and that's what I've got to call it now, since that's what it's being called, the operation to bring down the president. If you recall, Rick Grenell, who was temporarily in the office of the Director of National Intelligence, he saw all the information during the RNC. He said it turned his stomach. He said that there were some who came forward, the rank and file again, who came forward to speak about this, and they were silenced. They were silenced, which is why I think this Durham report is important. I mean, the CIA has said it will impact morale, but I'll tell you my opinion on this. There was thousands of men and women in the law enforcement and intelligence across this country who would like to know actually what their leadership has done on their behalf. This is not about morale. as in the rank and file, you're going to do something no, it's about the leadership decisions the leadership has taken, which is the same thing with my case. I mean, people look at me like, what are you, stupid for continuing going down this path? But, every single legal challenge that's thrown on me, I have to try and counteract it now at this point. And I can't be a whistleblower because the whistleblower system is broken, and I don't care what anyone tells you about it. And the final was during the president's phone call. You see, when that took place.
Let's take this back to the Dominion software. If Gina Haspel knew about the Steele dossier, if she knew about the intelligence that was coming out because she was the chief in London, right? She's the director of the CIA. She knows about this Dominion software. There's no doubt. I mean, there's no way that she cannot know about this. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And she knows that this software has been used abroad for one purpose, and that is the theft of an election. Is that right?
It's been used in other countries, yes, to influence elections in other countries, yes. And there is a record of that. So if you notice, just a few states used it, and many are coming out right now to say there's a reason why they never used it. Was that particular, were the exploitable vulnerabilities of it.
There are liberal Democrats who are saying, senators, for example, the dingbat here from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, she has 2 years ago written a letter saying we can't use this stuff. And that's when they thought that it would be swayed the other direction. The Russian collusion and the foreign meddling into our elections seems to have taken a pretty radical spin, almost in a 180 from what these liberal Democrats told us it was, to help Trump, but instead to hurt President Trump. Am I right?
Yeah, and in fact, we don't need to rely on the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians to interfere in our elections. We have an internal threat that's doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a more deadly threat than the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians are doing at this point. This has infiltrated every part of our government, and to me, I'm absolutely in shock about the fact that we lecture foreign governments on their elections, and yet here we are in this unresolved situation with more and more evidence come out. If anything, the president has said he would concede, but all the facts have to come out. And for us Americans, this has to be resolved this time, not next time, because you can't have the next administration, whoever it is, going with this cloud hanging over their head that the American people, they're never going to trust this again. No. And this is too important to just let go, for us.
And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think. You should want to know that there is no treachery, if you will.
Exactly.
And, all of this, to be honest, guys, it really kind of hurts me. It hurts in my chest. It pisses me off because this is the same government who will tell me and my brothers and sisters to get on a plane and go die for this country for a whole bunch of lies and a whole bunch of bullshit. Excuse my language, but it's extremely frustrating.
Watch your mouth.
Because there's so many kids, even young, who are 19, 20 years old, who never even had a chance to buy their first car, and they're blooding of other places in this world, and it's coming from a government that has nothing to do but lie to us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's extremely upsetting.
Yeah, and when you talk about, I've always felt really bad about our folks who go overseas, and it's always, you gotta go fight for the country, and then they come back, they're treated like shit. And then particularly, in my case, I actually went to Senator McCain's office to plead on behalf. I shouldn't have had to do that. This is what the military just does immediately, the first 5 minutes when there's an investigation of any sort overseas, to plead with the armed services on behalf of this colonel, And I was thinking if General Flynn had remained, really my wish was, okay, so I went through shit and I went through hell and I went through prison, but my case could be used, and this president would be the only one to do this.
This is all a part of the systematic targeting of America, sponsored by radical progressives whose aim is a totalitarian one world order system. That is Sabrina De Sousa. The time always goes too fast when we have interesting guests like you. Will you come back and keep us updated on your story?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely amazing. We have more coming on PC Radio all week as these bombs continue to drop all over the place. Make sure that you get over to the store, thepcradioshow.com, and click on the merch button. Get your new Antifa shirt. You're going to want to sport that thing. Until tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central. Here's what's up to it. Here's what's down to it. Here's to any way you can get to it. Here's to those that don't do it. May they be dragged to it, tied to it, or forced to it. And here's to us who do it because we're the ones that's used to it. Yeah. Remember to fly low and avoid the radar. One day they're going to come for the car. And when they do, save the radio.